Go back to C.J. Mahaney's quote. He said, today the greatest challenge facing Bible-believing American Christians is not persecution from the world, but seduction by the world. And you've got them both here. You've got seduction by the world in the woman. You've got persecution from the world in the beast. And both were working together for sure in this first century context to persecute Christians on one hand and at the same time to lure them into worldliness on the other hand. So, as this vision progresses, we see two particular actions take place. First, at the end of chapter 17, the woman is devoured by the beast. In graphic imagery, the beast turns on the woman, makes her desolate, devours her flesh, burns her with fire. The picture is an unbelieving, godless system turning on itself and destroying itself. And this happens, John writes, according to the purpose of God. Chapter 17, verse 17. For God has put it into their hearts to carry out his purpose. This happens according to the words of God. So again, God's sovereignty on display in world history. And because of this, ultimately, the woman disappears from the earth. And that's what chapter 18 is all about. Babylon falls. We see the smoke of her burning. Chapter 18, verse 21. An angel takes a millstone, throws it into the sea as a picture. It says, so will Babylon, the great city, remember the symbol of worldly ways and seductive promises of pleasure and wealth, will be thrown down. The ways of this world will be thrown down with violence and will be found no more. And this happens as a result of the judgment of God. Verse 20, just like we saw last week, we see God praised because of his just judgment of a sinful, fallen world. You get to chapter 19, verse 2, which we'll look at next week. And God is praised. His judgments are true and just. He's judged the great prostitute who corrupted the earth with immorality. So this prostitute, who symbolizes worldly seduction, ultimately receives the punishment that she is due. Now, what does all this mean? That's a quick summary of what's going on in chapter 17 and 18. But what does this mean? Specifically, what does this have to do with life in Birmingham, Alabama today? Well, think about what we learn about this world in this vision. So see, ladies and gentlemen, see what we learn about this world. Open your eyes and see that this world is full of deceptive attractions. Part of what John marveled at in chapter 17 was this alluring picture of what seemed like pleasure and strength and power. This appearance was enticing. Almost certainly, first century Christians would have looked at the strength of Rome and the luxuries of Rome and the pleasures of Rome, and they would have thought, is this so bad? Because this looks pretty good. It looks strong, looks enjoyable. Same way, 21st century Christians. Today, we look at the wealth and the technology and the advancement, the things around us, and we think, are all these things so bad? I mean, ease up. Not all this stuff is bad. So think, here in this text, and then in our lives, think about the lures of this world. Sensual pleasures. Chapter 17 and 18, filled with delicacies and splendor and music and dancing, seeming prosperity, sensual beauty, worldly delight. Do all of these things not entice us? Why else would we treat sex so casually, even in this room among professing Christians, whether we're married or we're single, sexually involved with people who are not our spouses? Or why do we even go so far as to please ourselves while we look at images? Is this not why we treat marriage so flippantly? Because we've been lured into thinking that if our needs are no longer met, we can just throw aside our spouse in search of newfound pleasure? Is this not why our parenting looks the same as the world around us? Because we desire for our kids the same things the world desires for their kids? Is this not why we don't tithe? Because we desire the stuff of this world more than we desire sacrifice for the body and for massive needs around the world. We're captivated by sensual pleasures, exemplified by desires for material possessions. All over these 2 chapters, the wealth of Babylon is put on display as warranting wrath. Wealth can kill. And it's not that money or material possessions are bad in and of themselves. But wealth, money in the hands of sinful men and women is a dangerous thing. We have no idea the measure to which money controls us in this room. We're so attracted by more and better and bigger and nicer and newer and cooler. So we save more than we need. We store up treasures in barns. We spend more than we have. We pile up debt with our desire for more things. The thought of simplicity in material possessions seems monastic to us. Strange, weird. And as a result, you can hardly tell the difference between our spending patterns and the spending patterns of non-religious neighbors around us. The lure of material possessions, the promise of satisfaction in the things of this world. This is what drives the desire for pleasure and possession. The promise that once I get this, once I do this, then I will be happy, or at least happier. The promise of satisfaction and the hope of security. Listen to the woman, chapter 18, verse 7. In her heart she says, I sit as a queen. I am no widow, and mourning I shall never see. With all the things this world has to offer, she says, I'm safe. I have no reason to worry. Same thing that the church in Laodicea was saying. I'm rich, I've become wealthy. I have need of nothing. We think that the greater pleasure we have in this world, the nicer possessions we have in this world, the more we will be not only satisfied, the more we will be secure. Is this not, let's be honest, is this not one of the primary reasons that the majority of us are not willing to seriously consider the possibility that God may be leading us to move to the Middle East? Many of us have not given anything beyond token thought to that. Serious second thought to moving our lives, our marriages, our families to a place like the Middle East. Because we've convinced ourselves that the stuff we have here is where our security is based. And we can't imagine life without all those things, stuff. And as if God is sovereign over this zip code, but not sovereign over that zip code. We're blinded by the hope of security and the things of this world. Or maybe from this statement in verse 7, it's the insatiable lust for power. Here's a prostitute who claims to be a queen. She thinks she is mighty. This is the danger of worldliness. We climb the corporate ladder. We achieve the cultural success. And we think we've arrived. Look at us. We've made it. But we have no clue the depth of our true place and position. And that's just it. The root of all of this is the subtle lure of pride. Verse 7, she glorified herself. That's it. That's the root. That's the theme that dominates these 2 chapters. She sees herself not as just a prostitute. She's a great prostitute, chapter 17, verse 1. She's Babylon the Great, chapter 17, verse 5. She's the great city, chapter 17, verse 18. Babylon the Great, chapter 18, verse 2. The great city, chapter 18, verse 10, 16, 19. Merchants were the great ones of the earth, chapter 18, verse 23. The root of all these worldly desires is a priority on ourselves. And we live, brothers and sisters, in a world that plays on this and appeals to this with pleasures and possessions and the promise of satisfaction and security, the desire for power. See this text showing us a world that is full of deceptive attractions. A attempting to entice us on a daily basis. And they are deceptive because this world is headed to a definite conclusion. It's fallen, John sees. Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great, chapter 18, verse 2. Now, Rome is still standing around him, but God says it's fallen. Guaranteed. What you see standing will not last. Though the power, the prestige of our culture and our country and our world stands today, brothers and sisters, it is fallen. It's fallen. Guaranteed. This world will be destroyed completely. Completely. The list at the end of chapter 18 is deafening. One day there will be no more music, no more craft, no more work, no more light, no more joy. Completely destroyed. And this world will be destroyed suddenly. So these kings and these merchants and these sea persons who profited from the ways of this world, they watch the fall of Babylon and they say with astonishment, chapter 18, verse 17, in a single hour all this wealth has been laid waste. Verse 10, in a single hour judgment has come. Just like that, it's all gone. What had been built over years and years, and even centuries, just like that, gone. This world will be destroyed suddenly, completely, and this world will be destroyed eternally. Its pleasures will perish forever. Verse 14, never to be found again. Oh, see this. Realize this. Learn this. The world is full of deceptive attractions that will all one day be destroyed. The pleasures and possessions of this world will one day be no more. They're going to burn up. The smoke will rise forever and ever. Satisfaction and security in the things of this world will not last. So don't build your life on these things. Who puts money in a stock that is guaranteed to fail? It's utter foolishness. You put stock in money that is guaranteed to succeed in an investment that will count. That's wise. This world will be destroyed completely, eternally, suddenly. And all of its deceptive attractions will be shown for what they are. What we learn about sin and Satan. Sin is self-destructive and eventually damning. Is there any clearer picture of the self-destructive nature of sin than this woman being devoured by the beast upon which she sits? This world will eventually turn on itself according to the purpose of God. And God will make it clear, sin always destroys. Always. Sin always destroys. When you and I sin, when you and I walk after the ways of this world, we are like cows walking to the slaughter. So listen. Listen to the words of Proverbs 7. So I'm going to read it. You just listen to the words of Proverbs 7 through the lens of Revelation 17. So Proverbs 7 is describing a young man going after a prostitute. So see a picture of our lives running after the ways of this world. The writer of Proverbs says, at the window of my house I looked down through the lattice. I saw among the simple a youth who had no sense. He was going down the street near her corner, walking along in the direction of her house at twilight as the day was fading, as the dark of night set in. Then out came a woman to meet him, dressed like a prostitute, and with crafty intent, she took hold of him and kissed him. With a brazen face, She said, I have come out to meet you. I have looked for you and have found you. I have covered my bed with colored linens from Egypt. I have perfumed my bed with myrrh, aloes, and cinnamon. Come, let's drink deeply of love till morning. Let's enjoy ourselves with love. My husband is not at home. He has gone on a long journey. With persuasive words, she led him astray. She seduced him with her smooth talk. All at once he followed her like an ox going to the slaughter, like a deer stepping into a noose till an arrow pierces his liver, like a bird darting into a snare, little knowing it will cost him his life. Now then, my sons, listen to me. Pay attention to what I say. Do not let your heart turn to her ways or stray into her paths. Many are the victims she has brought down. Her slain are a mighty throng. Her house is a highway to the grave, leading down to the chambers of death. Hear the gracious warning of God. He's saying to us, the ways of this world lead to death. You love this world, you follow after the ways of this world. You're like a deer stepping into a noose to have your liver pierced. And behind these ways, there's an evil adversary, Satan, who is a destroyer and who knows he is inevitably doomed. His doom is all over this passage. We're going to see this even more in the next couple of weeks. As the beast and dragon are dealt with. But notice the correlation here. Satan knows he's doomed. And so he aims to deceive and destroy all that he can on the way to his own destruction. But in the middle of all this, what we learn about Jesus. What we learn about Jesus. He is, chapter 17, verse 14, he is the conquering Lamb, the Lord of lords and King of kings. And by his overcoming grace, he calls us to be saved. He calls us to be saved. So, the good news, the great news, all throughout history, every single man and every single woman has succumbed to the seduction of the ways of this world, has turned aside from God to seek after the things of this world. All of us have, but there came one man in all of history on the scene of human history who did not succumb to the ways of this world, who resisted the seduction of this world at every single point, who fully sought his satisfaction only in his Father, who fully obeyed his Father. And yet, the one man who deserved no punishment, no wrath, no death, died on a cross in the place of sinners, taking the wrath and punishment that are due rebellious men and women who have turned aside from God. He died on the cross. He rose from the grave in victory over sin and death and Satan, so that everyone, every rebellious sinner who turns to him and trusts in him as Savior, Lord, conquering King, will be saved from their rebellion forever and reconciled into a relationship with God. It's glorious news for rebellious sinners all across this room who have given in to the ways of this world. Your sin is covered, your guilt taken away, sin atoned for by the blood of Christ. Turn. If you're a non-Christian, not a Christian tonight, I urge you to turn from the ways of this world tonight and trust in Jesus as the only one who can save you from coming judgment, coming wrath in this world. I know some of these verses may sound confusing. They're confusing to all of us, but don't miss the overall point. God is holy. We are sinners. We deserve just judgment for our sinful rebellion against him. But God is loving. He has sent his Son to pay the price for our sin, so that when you turn from your sin and trust in him, you can be saved forever by him. By his overcoming grace, he calls us to be saved. And then, for all who know him, called by him, saved by him, with his overcoming power, he calls us to be faithful. Those who are with him are called and chosen and faithful. The main point, in many ways, of this whole section of Revelation is chapter 18, verse 4, when a voice from heaven cries out, "Come out of her, my people, lest you take part in her sins, lest you share in her plagues." God here is pictured as pleading for his people to turn from the ways of this world before it's too late. He's saying, my judgment is coming on the ways of this world. Do not be found indulging in the ways of this world, showing yourself not to be my child when that day comes. Through his overcoming power, he calls us to be faithful. Which leads us to what we learn about our lives. Clearly, this is abundantly clear in Revelation 17 and 18. It's the point of 1 John 2:15. Do not love the world or the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. Very clearly, love for the world and love for God cannot coexist. Love for the world and love for God cannot coexist. Here's the way this works. It's simple. Love for the world pushes out love for God. The more we love the things and the pleasures and the possessions and the pursuits of this world, the less we will love God. The more we nibble at the table of this world, the more we feast on the things of this world, the more our hearts will grow numb toward God. Do we wonder why we don't have a deeper, abiding hunger for God in our day? Do you wonder why there's not a deeper, abiding hunger and longing for God in your life? Isn't it surely because our stomachs are so full with the pleasures and possessions that we have partaken of at the table of this world that we have no room left in our stomachs for a hunger for God? The more we love this world, the less we love God. And then it works the other way. Love for God pushes out love for the world. The more we love God, the more delight we have in God, the more we commune with God, the less we'll love this world. The more we see God as infinite pleasure, the more we see God as our supreme possession, the less we will run after lesser pleasures and possessions in this world. The more we look to God as the sole source of our satisfaction and security, the less we'll look to this world for satisfaction and security. We'll see this world pales in comparison to God. Oh, don't miss this. The call to turn away from the ways of this world is not a call to a dull, drab, dreary life where you miss out on all the fun. The call to turn from the ways of this world is a call to turn to superior joy and pleasure and possession and satisfaction and security in God. It's what C.S. Lewis talked about. Remember when he said we are half-hearted creatures, we're fooling about with drink and sex and ambition when infinite joy has been offered to us. We're like ignorant children who go on making mud pies in the slum because we cannot imagine what is meant by the offer of a holiday at the sea. We are far too easily pleased, he says. And it's true. if you are turning aside from your spouse, if you are indulging in pornography, if you are casual with sex, if you think climbing the corporate ladder or achieving worldly aims, whether in your life or your child's life, if you think these are the end game, if you think a nicer car or a second home will make you happy, in all of these things, your problem is not that you desire pleasure too much. It's that you desire pleasure too little. Your desire for pleasure is weak. You play with mud pies in a slum when infinite joy has been offered to you. It's utter foolishness. Yet the world has convinced us that it's satisfaction. Don't buy it. Love for God pushes out love for this world. So then, every one of us has a choice. That's the point here. This is the point. There's no neutrality in this world. There's no such thing as riding the fence. We got two options. Either we can love the things of this world, and if we do this, let us know this. If we love the things of this world, our pleasures will always be fleeting. Always be fleeting. The things that promise pleasure in this world will all fade. Guaranteed. Church, Christian, man, woman, student, teenager, hear this. The pleasures of this world are fleeting. The pleasures of this world are fleeting. They don't last. They won't last. If we love the things of this world, our pleasures will always be fleeting. And our destiny will be hell. Our destiny will be hell. So if you love this world and it will pass away, then it will take you with it. You'll not only lose true pleasure, you will lose your life. I don't know how to say this any more plainly. If you love this world, you will perish with this world. Period. It's clear in God's Word. So this is the first option. We can love the things of this world. Or, second option, we can love the God over this world. We can love the God who reigns supreme over this world. We can love the God who alone can satisfy us in this world. And when we take this option, our pleasure will be unfading. For there is pleasure in Him that far outweighs all the possessions this world could ever offer to us. And when we love the God over this world, we will know that our security will always be in heaven.